Hey, Dan, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Good.
You got 2 seconds?
What?
Sorry, Sir Kelly. Sorry. I knew he was capable without extreme effort. How's that?
Hello. How are you? Hey. Are you back in town? Or have you been gone? On a world tour?
No, I just got home today from Sioux Falls.
Oh.
But before that, I was clear up at the Utah-Idaho border too, out by Snowville, on the other side of the the Great Salt Lake.
Those are nice places this time of year.
Yeah, they are.
No Larry Zajac either, huh?
Is there?
Well, I thought Janelle would be here. She reports on this stuff. Got a letter for her too, but it's all right.
You got a letter from her?
Just something that she's going to. She wants to put out an every door direct mail piece, and I brought something from the post office on how that's handled.
That's nice.
But she may have talked to Bo about it. I'm not sure. I thought she'd be here.
Life's good? Life's good.
I'm good. You? Well, thank you. Oh.
Sweet, are we ready, Keith? Okay. I call to order this planning and zoning meeting on July 2nd, 2025. Is there any conflicts with any of the agenda items?
No.
No.
Weston?
Nope, we're good.
Okay, we'll move on to number 3, approval of minutes from June 4th. I read over those, but wasn't there, so I didn't see anything grammatical. You guys? Weston?
What's that?
Minutes for June 4th.
Yeah, I'm okay with it.
Okay, what about the 18th as well?
Yes.
Yes, you saw something, you're good.
No, yes, I'm good.
Okay.
I didn't hear, Jimmy.
Okay.
Were you doing the 4th?
The 4th, I did the 4th.
The 4th, I don't have a comment on.
Okay, and the 18th.
I do have a comment on the 2nd minutes.
Okay.
And this is actually from, again, Dave Burton's not able to come tonight, so he called me up today and has a couple items that he wanted to share on the agenda. The first item is the minutes from the 18th. And this is on page 3, conditional use permit regarding a advertisement sign placed on parcel number blah, 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 blah from Dwight Hargett. The third sentence says, as a part of this agreement, Mr. Hargett requested permission, blah, blah, blah. He's indicating that the sign was not part of the original agreement, that was a separate discussion, and thinks that the words, to strike the words that say part of, is it to the best of his recollection that was not part of the original agreement.
Do you guys remember that? I wasn't there that day.
Yeah. I don't recall, on my notes, I didn't note that specifically, but that was Dave Burton's comment regarding the minutes of that meeting.
What is he suggesting it be changed to?
With that we strike the words part of, as part of this agreement, because evidently that was not part of the original agreement, according to David. And Dan may have a comment on that, I'm not sure.
What do you guys think? I wasn't there. I mean, as part of this agreement, it sounds, I don't know, like it's still...
If you're not
agreement.
sure, and Dave
Yeah.
isn't here to clarify
Right.
himself, we could just not approve those minutes
Okay,
and wait till next time.
let's do that.
Okay,
So we'll wait to approve June 18th. So I just need a motion for June 4th.
I can make a motion to approve the minutes of June 4th.
I'll second.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, those are approved. And then we'll just wait to do those till Dave comes back on the 18th.
Do we need to move to table them?
Yeah, that's fine. That better be the way to do it.
I move to table the minutes from June 18th, 2025.
I second.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, we'll table those minutes.
Madam Chair,
Yeah.
we were talking right as you went over number 2, because he was asking me about whether he should declare a conflict and was just asking for some advice. So I think Weston might want to revisit number 2.
Okay.
Yeah, I want to declare a conflict of interest with the big dog storage. So I can participate in the discussion, but I won't be voting on it.
Okay.
That's just because he's a competitor in that market.
All right. Okay, thanks. All right, let's move on to number 4, decision of conditional use permit for big dog storage.
I don't know if everybody saw, I handed out a form. Conditional use permits are tricky because then it's an administrative act. If conditions can be put on something, and you'll see the language there. If we can put reasonable conditions that can mitigate the reasonably anticipated detrimental effects of the proposed use, then we're supposed to approve it administratively. The city usually can only deny a conditional use permit if the detrimental effects can't be mitigated through reasonable conditions. And then I think the question is can we reasonably impose enforceable is an important word there, reasonable conditions that will mitigate the negative effects, nuisance and so forth like that. And so that's really the job of the council or the commission, is to consider what things could be problematic, and are there conditions that could be put in place, and do we believe those conditions will actually accomplish the goal. I handed out a document. You can't just put random conditions out of the blue, requiring the applicant to wear a red hat or requiring them to go to church, right? They have to be conditions that would mitigate a reasonable problem, that a business of this nature next to a residential zone could be the case. Some of the things in our code already attempt to do that, like the requirement for a 7-foot high masonry wall when a commercial business is right next to a residential zone. That's a requirement in our code that's trying to mitigate noise, negative impacts from, sight, things like that of that commercial business. that's one aspect, that's one thing. Light, sound, people coming and going in the middle of the night, doing business during the middle of the night or something like that. So, those are the types of things that we can entertain, and I provided a list of some possible, problems that could be mitigated. And you can say, yep, we disagree with all these, throw them all out, or yep, we think these are more valid and we should include something like that. The ones in bold are staff recommendations, but you guys are planning commission and you get to do whatever you wanna do. Or you can deny it. If you deny it, it needs to be based on the fact that there is a perceived problem that is relevant or that is valid that can't be mitigated, or you don't believe the mitigation will actually work. So that's just some suggestions. I don't know what the council, commission wants to do. You heard all of the comments last time. 2 times ago, I read a statement from the city's perspective, so that's where we're at.
All right, thank you. So my thoughts on this is that he is in a commercial zone, so it's always, been zoned. There can be commercial business right there and everything like that. The neighbors have known that. It's been commercial forever. We do have a storage facility right around the corner as well. That would fit in the way that I cannot even think right now. My words, sorry you guys. It would go ahead and along with what's already there. So I feel like it would just go with the flow of that. What I do have a problem with is that there is an ongoing pattern of noncompliance with the city ordinances, and nuisance ordinances that I have there. That makes me wonder if the conditional use is approved, that we're going to be still following the ordinances that the city sets in place.
Well, the ordinances would remain the same, is that not correct?
Yes, but the ordinances have been in place since he's been on that property and he hasn't followed them.
Okay.
So
And
that's my only concern.
what's the ramifications of that? I mean, has he been issued citations and so forth?
Dan did go over this a month ago. He did, where the city has worked with him, and I know there has been legal action taken and everything with that. I don't know if we wanna, Jerry's not familiar with it. Dan, can you just kind of?
I think I remember some of the conversation.
I can
but-
give you a Reader's Digest version. And some of the things that I read were fact-based in things went to court. Those court proceedings did not end up with charges, but mostly the reason they didn't end up with charges was because there was a compromise that there wouldn't be any continued, behavior, that he would leave. The person who cut the deal with him is sitting right over there. He can tell you himself.
So when I became the city attorney, Russ Emery was facing charges, yes. Hi, Russ. And, began a series of many phone calls and many emails, and, he also, came in with Dan Roberts, who, like Dennis, is a person I respect greatly, and Dan said that he was selling the offending property, that he owned some other property, but the charges related to harassment of neighbors and others, and shining lights, and, potentially dumping sewage in the creek, and none of it went to trial, so none of those are, sustainable facts. But I was told that he would be moving to Arizona, he'd be gone. I think he was gonna live with his daughter or near his daughter, and so the world would be round. And based upon that, I dismissed those charges that had been filed by Justin Wayman, frankly, that had been pending for 2 or 3 years. I don't know what took so long to come to a resolution. So I figured that was the end of it. And I heard, they're trying to run Russ over when he's on his bike, and Russ is harassing the neighbors out there, but I thought it's all resolved. Everything's good. Then, we have the second piece of property that's at issue tonight, and there were 2 trailers on there, and he's living in one, in violation of the code, and he was told that. But he continued to live there, and he had a stock water permit, and he was using the water from the stock permit to live there. And so I informed the city attorney, or the city manager, that we should turn the water off, because you can't live there in a trailer, using a stock permit, and there were 2 trailers, frankly. So then he, hired Jim Jensen, who I had many conversations with and emails back and forth, and we came to an agreement, and that was that he would immediately move the trailer that he was residing in off the property. In the meantime, I understand he was trying to find some livestock to rustle up to put on the property to justify the water permit. I got calls from some people around town. Hey, do you know anything about Russ Emery needs to get a cow or 2 or a sheep on that yes. And I know why. And so he did that, though. He moved the trailer he was living in to, if you can believe it, a trailer park, where trailers are appropriate. But there was still a trailer on there. And he had 30 days to remove that trailer. Well, 30 days came and went, and then 60 days, and I called Jim Jensen, and he said, is that what we agreed? And I sent him the email. And to my knowledge, is it still there? It's still there.
I believe so.
And so, I mean, I don't know what to say. And I'll look Russ in the eye and Dennis in the eye and say, a reasonable person would say, if you have 30 days to move a trailer, and I know he has the wherewithal and equipment and know-how, and if he doesn't, I'm sure he could employ somebody that does know how to move a trailer and move it. But he didn't move it. And then in the meantime, I also get more complaints that he's parking his truck and shining lights in the windows of his neighbors. So the neighbor work continues. So I don't know what to tell you about Russ Emery. He's an enigma to me. And I don't even know him. I've had many emails and texts. We finally ended up texting because I didn't find it appropriate to speak to him on the phone. So if you're asking me, my experience with him has been that he is non-compliant. He isn't respectful of what the city attorney tells him or what the code tells him or ongoing investigations, or I dismissed the charges that Justin Wayman filed in good faith, thinking it was over, because he told me with his own mouth that he was moving and he wouldn't be here and he was retiring to Arizona. So that's what I know, and I can tell you tonight. And as we sit here, if that trailer's still sitting there, that's in violation of the agreement that we made with Jim Jensen, with Russ Emery, and with me on behalf of the city.
Thank you.
And if I'm not mistaken, from some conversations several meetings ago when this first came up, I think the reason that he wanted to establish this business is so he could sell the property. Was that not correct? Wasn't that your ultimate goal, sir? Yes. So why don't you sell the property without the trailer park?
Can you come up to the microphone, please?
And announce your name for the general public as soon as we turn on the mic.
It's just that his property is located next to that corral, and it's just really not conducive to commercial applications other than storage. I think a storage place would be very applicable, because you're going to have maybe 100 units right next to him there, as the town's growing. You also have the HOA, the house across the street, the complex, that they fenced off an area in R3, and they're storing RVs and cars and stuff against the rules. They're in R3. They can't have storage. The same thing's going to happen right next to him, because there's no facilities for that type of storage. and I think it's needed. I don't think that Russ, no, I've talked to Russ, and I don't know all the other things, but I don't think that he was told that he had to move, or at least he told me that he didn't have to move that one trailer, that it had to be moved up front. There's nothing against the ordinances that I know of that's permitting him from having that trailer on that property. It is for him living in it, but he has moved down to Washington County, and that's where he lives. But I think he has a right to have his trailer on that property as long as he's not living in it.
Well, the agreement with the attorneys that
I didn't see that agreement. Did you?
well, yes, I saw that agreement. I was involved in the creation of that agreement, was that both trailers were moved.
Oh, I didn't.
Because there wasn't, you know, you get to a point where you lose, the benefit of doubt,
All right.
and we were at that point. So if we were gonna allow the water to be still turned on, the ability to live there in a trailer needed to go away because the trailers needed to be gone. You're absolutely right. If somebody wants to put a trailer on a piece of property and just store it there, you can do that. It's when we had gotten to the point we had that in order to turn the water back on for the animals, the trailers needed to be gone, and that was the deal that was cut.
I didn't realize that.
Yep.
I thought just the one.
Yeah, step up to the mic,
Absolutely.
please.
Yep. Come to the microphone, please,
I
don't you?
don't know where to start here. There was 2 trailers there, one of them no one's living in. I thought they wanted me to move it right up on the fence where they could come by and see that nothing was hooked up. There's no water hooked up, there's no, septic. You know, when people keep accusing me of dumping sewage, nothing's been dumped, ever. I have family in Arizona, I have family in Salt Lake, I just got back from Montana. I travel a lot. I haven't been living there full time. What we have is the hate syndrome of some neighbors, excuse me, across the street that continually, for years, pound on me, pound on me, pound on me.
Hey, wait, Russ,
Yeah.
don't turn around and refer to the neighbors. And hey, I gotta say something.
Yeah.
Last time in the public hearing, we had direct personal attacks that got way out of hand.
I just like to talk.
Wait, hang on, hey,
I
just we can take turns speaking.
Okay.
So tonight, let's keep it to facts.
Maybe
and
just
even
address
if it's
what I
suspected
said,
behavior.
and that goes to non-compliance, and that is me stating that the agreement was both trailers would be gone, and he said the one is already moved, and then the one you said was your sister's would be moved in 30 days, and that was, I think, 90 days ago.
It was probably going on 4 months. I misunderstood you.
No, it's in an
I was gonna say,
I sent the email to the city manager.
Well, all it's been is just spending thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars trying to defend myself, over stuff like this. I thought the chief of police wanted the trailer where he could come by and look at it and see that there was no water hooked up, there's no septic hooked up, there's nothing hooked up, there's no one living in there at all.
I don't remember anything about the chief of police or anybody coming to see if anything was hooked up, because it would have been simple, because would be nothing to inspect, because it would be moved. It would be off the property, and then the stock water would stay on, consistent with you wanting to have livestock there, not
Well, and
trailers parked.
that's another thing, Mr. Burns, is that I don't have a stock water permit. When I paid for that water permit about 15 years ago, it was for 2 houses, it was for 1 large garage, it was for 12 cows and a garden. That's what it was for,
Okay,
not
well,
for stock.
no cows.
I always have cows,
But
every year.
here's the thing,
Oh.
there was
Have
no
cows
building
every year.
permit pulled. The way the city works is this: when you come in to ask for water, we don't say, yep, here's water. We say, okay, pull a building permit, pay the connection fees and the impact fees, then you get your building permit. We don't say, here's water and just give you water.
Well, back then they did. This is like 15
Well,
years.
we're operating based on your word and no evidence right now on that claim. So I don't know if we can use that as evidence in this thing. You say that it wasn't for stock water, the city says it was for stock water. All I know is that in order to get utilities, you have to have a valid reason, and from what the city has in its institutional knowledge, it was for stock water.
Well, I would like to turn this whole thing around and make something positive. I've been self-employed up until when I retired for over 30 years. I would like to make something positive happen on this property. I would like to put some new containers, storage containers. I would like to put prefabricated roofs over and make them look really nice, and do covered storage, covered parking. You know, this town is growing. There's gonna be RVs, there's gonna be trucks, trailers, RVs, boats, campers everywhere. So I just don't think it's fair you tell me to get I moved the one, and I live in it when I'm in town, but I just got back.
So,
I'm not
you just admitted to living in it when you know
When
the
I'm in
city ordinance
town.
says you're not
But
supposed
it's
to,
in an
correct?
RV park.
Can I just stop for 1 second, correct?
It's in an RV park. Now I live in it.
Are you living in the trailer sometimes on that property?
No, I'm not.
But you just admitted that you were.
Ma'am, that's not what I said. What I said
You
was
said you live in
I'm,
it occasionally. Okay, anyways,
well, please let me, you know,
Okay.
address what you said. The one trailer that's sitting right on the fence line hasn't been lived in years. Years. It doesn't even belong to me. The little 20-footer that I live in when I'm in town, is in an RV park. And I can show receipts of that.
Okay, so when did you buy that recent small trailer? I mean, when I came here as a city manager, there was only one
Right.
trailer, and you were living there then.
Could we maybe, is it possible that we could look at of what I want to do, and that's open up a storage facility, a legitimate storage facility?
Well, here's the deal. Yes. However, if we're going to talk about the storage facility, we're going to talk about conditions on that storage facility to not impact the neighbors. There is a bigger decision or a fundamental question before we get into the detail of that, is to whether any conditions that get put on will be abided by. And I think that's ultimately what the commission is grappling with, is if conditions are put on, what is the likelihood that you will follow those conditions given the recent history? And that's why we're stuck on where we're at, rather than fighting about all of the past history of
Right.
of the details of it. The question is whether the commission feels like it's worth spending all the time to put conditions on if they don't believe that you're gonna follow it.
I don't want to live in a dirt lot with
I'm
no
answering your
utilities.
question, and now you're changing, you're
No,
going back to
No, I'm not.
details.
I'm trying to move forward with, I don't, you know, this has just been over and over and over and over. It's just like dumping sewage. I don't dump sewage. I never have. I never did. I never will. Ever.
But Russ, you have been saying that you don't live there for years and years and years, when yourself, through your attorney, has admitted that you have. Now, that is a statement of record that we have via emails from your attorney, Jim Jensen. My point being,
He denied that.
I don't care, we have it in email.
Okay.
You can say anything you want to say with your mouth. What we have is black and white letters from a respected attorney.
Okay.
So we don't just go and throw that out and say, well, that didn't mean to happen, or that didn't exist. My point is this: you can make a lot of promises here, but we have past history that we have gone through, and so that becomes part of the record of evidence that the commission gets to consider. Now, you can say, I don't ever want to live here again. I personally believe you're not currently living there now after this last deal. However, you didn't take the trailer off. I don't think you're living in the trailer that's remaining, but you still didn't comply with the agreement, which shows, to Scott's point, a pattern of behavior of not following the rules. Even when we get right down to agreements with attorneys, which should be pretty ironclad, still not following the rules. And, well, I thought this, and changing the story. So if we put conditions on here, how much faith do we have that you'll follow them, or say, well, that's not really what they meant, and I'm going to go ahead and do this other thing anyways? That's the question at the heart of this thing.
yeah.
Stated another way, if you
Okay.
were seeking an application to build a home in R1, there are conditions 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And you have every right to build a home in R1 if you meet those conditions.
Right.
You're seeking a use that under the city code is called a conditional use permit, meaning it's conditional upon you doing certain things. And it's a little bit different than the other way, which if you meet the qualifications and you fill out the application, you pay the fees and you pull the permit, you can comply with an R1, but this is different.
I could
So,
put together a
now
nice
the
place.
city has the right to say, as, Mr. Justin just said, why would we go through all this if he has a history of not complying with, I'll just be blunt with you.
Okay,
I'm an attorney, and if Dan Justin told me to have a trailer off of that lot by Saturday, I would go get it. And especially if I told him I would, 'cause that kind of stuff bothers me. But you knew that that was what you were supposed to do, 'cause you moved one immediately over into a trailer park,
Well,
right?
can I
I'm
answer?
almost done.
Okay,
You moved the one to a trailer
I did,
park
yes,
and hooked it up to sewer and water.
right.
And now the argument shifts to, well, that other one's not hooked up, and I'm not sleeping there, and I'm not... That's a collateral argument. The agreement was you would move that one off, and you didn't do it, and you still haven't done it. And so, I don't know, I don't know that I'd dare come in here. I have the audacity to stand up here and say, give me a conditional use permit, 'cause I would expect them, and Dennis Cheek, if he were the city attorney, to say, Scott, you haven't complied with anything we've asked. How could,
Well, I feel that I have, Mr. Burns, and
Okay.
and the reason for that is when the chief come out with the city boys and they're looking, and Dan's been out as well, I believe, they're looking to see if there's, you know, and they keep saying, where's your septic, where's your septic? I don't have one. He said, well, move it toward the fence. Move it over there where we can see it.
As long as I'm here, don't misrepresent something. I've never said move anything towards the fence, and I've never been on the property. So don't say I did something
Okay.
that I didn't.
All right, we're gonna stop. We're gonna discuss up here now. Thank you very much. We've heard from you before on the thing. It seems like you have your point, they have their points. We've heard your side. We've got complaints from the neighbors, 19 pages. I would like to talk to my counsel right now for just a second, please. What are your guys' thoughts right now about this?
Well, I guess we need to discuss more in depth the actual conditions of the conditional use permit. I mean, the conditions might be such that it's not appropriate for this gentleman to pursue his goal. I mean, I know that Weston's bowed out, just as an example, around the corner, there's another property and it's fully fenced. You know, if I was storing something on your property, I wouldn't want it not fenced. Want people
Right.
just to walk in and mess around with my stuff I'm paying to have stored there.
Well, that's why I'm here, to see what the rules are.
Okay,
So-
and that's,
What you guys want me to do?
So what my thoughts are, is he hasn't been in compliance, so if we give him a conditional use permit, and we say, okay, you need to have A, B, and C, and D done, I don't feel at this point that we can have any hope or consideration that he is going to comply with that, because he hasn't complied with other ordinances.
then he couldn't proceed and start his business.
Yeah.
He doesn't get
But-
the permit until the conditions have been met. Is that not correct? I mean, that's what conditional use permit means.
Right.
Here's the conditions, meet them, and by God, we'll be behind you. If you don't meet them, take a hike. Go to Beaver, try there.
Sounds fair to me. Sounds
It's
fair
not
to
gotta
me.
be that simple, does it not?
Well, what my thoughts and feelings are is he's gonna put a Connex box on there without any pavement, without any fences, and he's gonna start renting them out
And
without meeting any.
that should be a condition then.
It is, but how are you going to follow through and make him follow those rules when he hasn't done that before with the trailers on his
Because
property?
if he doesn't have the
How would-
stuff down, he doesn't get the business license and the permit so he can start his adventure.
But he's been living on his property currently that he's not supposed to be, and he's not followed the ordinances on that, Jared.
Well,
So that's just what I'm saying is,
I mean-
how do you make him liable to follow the ordinances when he hasn't before, and he's even gone to legal action, and he's currently not even following the ordinances right now?
well,
That's my thought process,
okay, but again,
yeah.
I mean,
No,
my
that's okay.
first thought was citation, you know? Here's a ticket for $4,000,
But that has-
pay it and we'll move on.
But that hasn't worked, and he's even gone to legal counsel with it, so.
Okay, well, whatever. Again, I think we should dictate the conditions which might change this whole operation. If the conditions are such that it's not, accommodating,
That's why I'm here, to see
Then-
what,
then
see
there you
what the
go.
rules are. I
You-
mean,
you move on.
these two gentlemen right here have made it perfectly clear that, we have rules to follow. I understand that.
Okay.
I honestly thought I was okay with that one trailer right on the fence line, 'cause they can see, they can clearly.
okay, it's not, get rid of
I
it,
told you
okay?
2 months ago you weren't,
Yeah,
and that you
it's gotta
should
be
be
gone
removed.
tomorrow, that's the first condition, okay?
It's been a little bit of stress.
Gone tomorrow, or that's the first condition.
All right, Shane, what's your opinions?
I don't have anywhere to move it.
Russ, the commission,
Climb it up
this
your
is-
ass.
Hey,
We're-
wait.
yeah.
I believe the chair has asked that the back and forth stop.
Yeah, so if you just wanna
This
take a
is
seat right now
just
for
the
a
commission
second.
will be talking and
If
discussing.
you can just take a seat right now for a second, please,
sure.
I just want the commission to discuss it right now. Thank you.
And we can take turns.
One of my biggest issues to start, I'm completely unaware with the history, so you got a clean slate here. In chapter 15, section 18, it clearly states that the submittal for this request must have supporting maps and drawings, site plans. That way we can properly evaluate he can properly demonstrate and we can evaluate the impacts to set conditions. And I don't see any of that to properly evaluate.
Yeah.
So I feel like this application is incomplete, is my take. Yeah, I don't have them.
So it would have been in the packet, what was submitted, 2 meetings ago. Let me see if I have that in my email and can pull it up from that packet. If that's the way the commission wants to look at that.
And then my second thought is, we shouldn't be considering, conditions, on a property that's currently out of compliance. Once it's in compliance, I feel like the commission at that point can properly evaluate the situation.
I agree.
There's the site plan you asked about.
Oh, I have that too.
Is that correct, sir? That's what was presented several meetings ago.
Which I can find and put up on the screen, or you can look at, but if there is a consensus behind that second comment, then if you wanna deny it until he's in compliance and then bring it back, that could happen too. But therefore, do you wanna go into all the detail until that happens or not? I mean, I'm just wondering if people agree with that, the other commissioners agree with that or no? 'Cause I'm looking for that now, so I can bring it up in front of the screen if you wanna talk about it.
We do have a site plan, but it doesn't say how big anything is on it. It just gives me the length. Pardon me? It just shows me is this what we're talking about? I think so. Yeah, it just. Has the outside measurements? Yeah, just the outside of the property. Yeah.
Of the ones that are considered for the storage. If you want each little container in there, we can do that. But it has the overall size of it,
Yeah, just of the property.
not just of the property, just the area that he wants contained as storage.
It's not getting us any information on what he wants to build, if they're storage containers, if they're covered, what size they are, if there's a fence involved, pavement, they have to be paved now, blacktop. It just literally gives me the outside dimensions of the property.
Blacktop, could you clarify that? I'm having a little trouble hearing you, blacktop, what?
Yeah, there was an ordinance passed a year ago, I believe, probably 2 years ago, that if you do anything like that, you have to have asphalt. So you have to have blacktop asphalt.
I believe that what was passed says hard surface.
Hard surface. So gravel, Yeah, gravel isn't included. I know Weston's is gravel, other properties on 200 South is included, but that was before the ordinances was made. Gravel, but that was before the ordinance was made.
So so hard surface as defined at that time was not necessarily asphalt, but it has to be a hard packed surface, and that would have been anything from that movie.
When those commercial buildings on 200 South, I think I remember part of that discussion back then. That was
Yeah.
part of the asphalt slash hard compact.
They had
It's
been
gravel,
put
but
in-
it's compacted.
In fact, that was one of the things that led to that whole
Yeah.
discussion,
Right.
is because they just had gravel,
Right.
and,
They had to compact it to harden it because of the water runoff and all that other stuff.
right. No, I believe it was all
It's
commercial.
all commercial.
No, I
Right.
remember that. That was just 200 South.
I
believe
can pull it
it's all
up, it'll be whatever's in the ordinance
Pull it
will be
up.
what we did.
Well, I remember the conversation, that was several years ago, but that was,
Yeah.
that they wanted to just go the cheap route, and that wasn't applicable.
Either way, he's not compliant right now. He hasn't fulfilled his agreement. I think we should just deny it until it's in compliance and he's done what he said he would do.
I agree with
I
that.
don't buy the misunderstanding when it's printed in a letter. Pretty easy to understand.
I'm confused, still confused on the blacktop.
Mr. Burns will explain it.
You just put a new building in and it's not, there's no blacktop there.
Okay,
That's not
We're
really-
done with the back and forth, remember we talked about that?
that's hard packed surface does not equal blacktop. You don't have to be blacktop, it has to be a hard packed surface. Compacted.
Okay. All right, what's your thought, Shane? You'd like him to come back until he's in ordinance? You wanna still discuss it?
Do you want a motion?
Yeah. I-
Sure.
Yeah, fulfill whatever
We'll need,
documents.
I don't wanna just say it off the top of my head, I wanna go back and actually read it word for word. But I know at least move that trailer was one of the things, but we're gonna wanna review that.
Can I say something, please? Can I have a minute here?
That's up to the chair.
No, we're just gonna, just talk up here, please. All right, if you guys wanna make a motion.
But yeah, if we're,
Oh, looking at hard surface.
no, I'm saying, yeah, so this is for maintenance of parking lots with off-street parking requirements. Each off-street parking lot shall be surfaced with a hard surface. Parking lots serving a high volume of traffic shall be surfaced in such a way to provide a dustless service. The parking area shall be so graded as to dispose of all surface water. If such water is to be carried to adjacent streets, shall be piped under sidewalks. So, I'd have to do a little bit of research on this to see how that would apply, but if I remember right, it is regarding off-street parking, because streets by definition are hard surface. And if any, a business requires an off-street parking lot, then that's what would apply. But I'd have to look and see if there was something else, but it's been quite a minute since we did this, so I'd have to double check. That's just off the top of my head, so.
Okay,
Does it give an area here?
It doesn't. That's under the area of off-street parking requirements.
That's applicable for this particular circumstance, right? That's
Well,
off-street
if
parking
if we require off-street parking
as part of the conditional
as
use.
part of the conditioning, then yeah, it would apply.
Right.
If we don't, then it wouldn't.
But I
Well,
don't
it
think
seems to me that would be, I mean,
If that hard surface went beyond 200 South, you wouldn't have statewide equipment right there with gravel yard.
that's in,
Well, that building was already, statewide?
Yeah, that was annexed in.
That was annexed in after they had built the building. They never got a building permit from us. They got their building permit from the county when statewide equipment was still in the county. And then it annexed in, and it was already built or being finished, but we never even issued a building permit for that. We didn't have to, the county did. They were, like I said, they were in the county when they built that.
oh, but we're talking about the building in Parowan now, right? Isn't it?
Yeah. You'll have to check, but I'm pretty confident that hard surface doesn't apply to every commercial zone. But
Does
that's not really
Weston,
the,
did you say does not?
does not, but that's not really the issue right here,
Yeah.
right now.
Nope.
All right.
All right, are we ready for a motion? Do you guys still wanna discuss this?
I think we will at that time. So I'll move to deny the conditional use permit pending the property become into compliance before considering the application.
I'll second that.
Okay, what was the motion again? Sorry, I didn't hear the first part.
To deny the,
Oh, okay. Okay, all those in favor?
aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, the ayes have it.
I will look through that agreement, talk with Scott, send out, information on that to the commission and to the applicant.
Okay, good.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, let's move along to number 5. Discussion on short-term rental code.
No, nothing, any time we talk, it just begets more confusion.
Russ, we're in the middle of a meeting, so this can wait until after, please. Thank you.
I'm not,
We're still in the middle of a meeting. This is, yeah, so, thank you. All right, let's move along. Short-term rental.
Okay, short-term rental code. Let me pull up what we have. Okay. So I believe this is where we left off. You know what it was? So I knew that we had a time limit on getting to our parks open space subdivision requirements. And so I've spent a lot of time on that one. And I have not had a chance to go through and make any updates to the short-term rental code. And I know that's the second time I've said that, but, I'm gonna ask that we table that one more meeting. And then I can focus on that.
Okay. Can I get a motion?
I'll move to table the short-term rental code discussion.
I second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, we'll table that discussion. Move on to number 6, discussion on parks, open space, and subdivision.
Okay, parks, open space, subdivision stuff. So if you all remember where we're at on this, and let me give a little bit of information, regarding to maybe the timeliness or the pressure, if you will, on the time frame to move, not quicker than is advisable, but certainly not delay it. The city council approved the annexation agreement and annexation of the Meisner subdivision. And in that agreement, it says that they will comply with whatever parks/open space code we have on file at the time a subdivision application comes in. So right now, we don't have anything really definitive, so the council would like us to, stay on this process and move it along so that we have that done. Now, chances are, we have a little bit of time. The process to get the annexation to the Lieutenant Governor's office and approved will probably take, my guess is, a month minimum, possibly a month and a half. We're waiting for a Mylar, then the Mylar has to go to the city engineer for review, then it's gotta go to our attorney for review and his signature, then it's gotta go to the county surveyor for review and his signature, then back to the city. We then create a digital format, send it with the ordinance up to the Lieutenant Governors. They take some time, and then it comes back, and then it gets recorded. We would like to have this in place before that happens. It is what it is. If we don't, then that's fine. They may come in day one and have an application, and for whatever phase they apply for, whatever we have on the books at the time would apply. However, having said that, there is a provision in state code that says if we are actively working on a change to land use code, we can deny an application until that process is finished, and then at that point, either the new code takes effect, or it reverts to the old code. It's a vesting provision. However, if you've gone to any land use trainings, you'll know that case law has proven that there's a 6-month time frame for making that decision, or else you can't use it to just indefinitely just not approve something. So that's training from the Land Use Institute, Craig Call. If you're working on code, you have 6 months to essentially hit the pause button on any new applications. We started this back when the city council said we'd like you to look at it. That would be officially what started the process to look at code, and I don't know exactly how long that is, but we're probably at least a month and a half on that 6-month clock. Personally, I would rather just get this all resolved before an application comes in. I don't want to deny an application and then go the rounds with them about it. I'd just like to get it done. But if we have to fall back on that, we can. So that's the background I wanted to let you know about, that application did go through. We also have another annexation, which is the, I want to say Larry Pendleton, but it's Prime West Development, which is a company that he owns that holds land that has been in process for quite some time on an annexation as well. So it's timely that we get this done. So when we last talked, we talked through the concept of, remember we had a 5% number, and we were going to apply that across the board to any development. After discussions with the commission, you all decided that it might make more sense to have that change depending on the density of the zone, meaning the larger, the more spaced out the zoning, the less we need to reserve public space because people have bigger yards and all of that stuff. The more dense that you get, the more need for open space and parks, right? Remember that conversation? Mm-hmm. So I took it back to the drawing board, and under the section of public parkland dedication, I added this section here. This is applicability by zone. Rural estates, zero, as in no, open space dedication or fee in lieu is required due to the large lot sizes and low density of development. Essentially what we're saying, we have hardly any rural estate zoned property in the city, but you're already requiring minimum lot sizes of 1 acre. So we're saying in an area that has 1 acre lot size, we're not going to make them reserve any open space. Now, I just came up with these numbers out of the cold blue. You can say that's dumb and change it if you want. R1, R1A, and A1, which all have the same lot size, subdivisions shall provide open space exactions equal to 1.5%. So that's dropping it from that number of 5%, which we agreed was probably on the upper end, 5%, right? Dropping it to 1.5 on R1, 3% on R2, and 4.5% on R3. So keep that in your mind for a second. Think about that. We'll come back to it. The other thing that I did was I changed. Oh, okay. The other thing we had was additional open space in high density or cluster development. So there's not very many opportunities to even do a PUD anymore, but there are some, like if you're doing, like in a general commercial and it's mixed use or something like that, that they would have to do, or master plan development, which is still a chapter within our code, that they would reserve an additional, and we had 10%, I lowered that to 5, an additional 5%. Now that's not land that they're going to deed to the city. That's just that they're going to reserve as common open space. So in our previous discussion just now, not to bring that sliver back up, but the landowner talked about the PUD across the street and said that they have some area that is, they have some storage illegally, right? Well, that's actually what we would call common open space. that the Eagle Rock subdivision has reserved for the residents. And they let them store stuff in there. They also have common open space, which is a clubhouse and things like that. So think of when it says at least an additional 5% of the gross site area, that's property that isn't the public, it's not a public park, but they're reserving that. And it could be a trail system, but it's something that they maintain. And it's just requiring them to reserve some additional space. Not give it to the city, but reserve it for open space requirements. So that's pretty much the only adjustments that I made, other than I fixed the table, according to those new, numbers that I had thrown out. The percentage requirement, remember it's the same for all the A1, R1, R1A, but then you apply that to an assumed land value per acre, times that by the total acreage, and you end up with a fee in lieu of price per acre if it's a small subdivision, under 10 acres, right? So that's how much they would pay per acre in an R1 area. If it was a small one and they wanted to do a fee in lieu of, rather than dedicating a small piece of property, right? So that's the change, and I updated the fee in lieu of example. So I don't know how you feel about that. Do you think that that's a good approach on a density approach on zoning? If you do or don't, what numbers would you rather see?
I'm a little concerned about, 1.5% being a little too low. For example, a 10-acre subdivision, that would be 0.15 acre open space, right? Or am I misunderstanding something?
You know, 10-acre subdivision.
So maybe it needs a tiered, 10 acres or less might need to be 5%, so it could be a half-acre open space. And then maybe higher than that, you could cut the percentage back. Because, if you're talking about a 200-acre subdivision, then that gets a little excessive at 5%, right?
I'd like to make a comment on behalf of David Burton.
That would be a 10-acre
Oh, sorry.
park.
Yeah, that's.
So that would be what's a football field? 3, 4?
Yeah.
So I think it probably needs a scale by volume, doesn't it? Like a schedule?
Dave Burton was a little concerned about that as well in conversation. He called me today. As we know, he wasn't at the last city council meeting, and yes, that method was approved by the city council, but
Totally could work.
he wasn't here to vote, and he would have certainly voted against it. So he wants me to tell you that that wasn't a unanimous vote. Had he been here, he would have voted against it. He's also concerned about the 5% number. Where did the number come from? Why did we come up with 5%?
So we did talk about this last time or the time before. 5% was not actually out of the cold blue. It was a number that was arrived at looking at the amount of park acreage we want to have per capita based on our general plan. Only it says, I think that's the way the general plan reads it, is a park acreage per capita. So then when you say here's a subdivision, you now are trying to figure out how many people are going to be in that subdivision. So using some assumptions to try to guess on how many people are going to be in a subdivision, that's how I worked backwards into that. Now, 5% was the upper end of the range. I think I figured that it was somewhere around 3 to 5%, based on an assumption on average per capita across all the zones.
But it's just being discussed, right? They didn't approve.
No. But the number wasn't just pulled out of the thin blue air. It was using some assumptions. It was mathematically derived. But it was definitely the higher end of that range.
Yeah. I know that says.
Dave just texted me and said, I don't think we approved any percentage.
Nothing has been approved.
Right,
It was just
Just
presented as a starting point.
correct.
And this is all, I know it's based off the gross area, but it's all above and beyond like roads.
Yeah, it's
Right.
gross area.
So like,
Gross versus net is a big difference.
because if like, you know, you have 10 acres.
Yep.
Roads are gonna open up quite a bit, and then you have and in this case, there'd be an additional little over eighth of an acre requirement.
So the reason why you're gonna, even if you adjust your percentage, feel free to adjust the percentage all you want, but we're still gonna wanna apply it to the gross acreage,
Right.
because depending on their layout and depending on all kinds of things, after they get done carving it all up, it could look much different one way or the other. So in order to treat all subdivisions fairly, when they come in that initial meeting with the city to say, what are your requirements, we can just tell them gross acreage, so that they can start planning, start doing their math.
Yeah. 'Cause that may look like, and you know, could look like your roads plus wider park strips on each side in a 10 acre subdivision, which actually opens up
Yeah.
quite a bit.
And I think there's another part of this conversation is, personally, I would like some clarification on what this sitting commission wants to do regarding sidewalks. The reason being, if you have a subdivision that has curb, gutter, and sidewalk, those are areas that people can walk easily on, walk their dogs, do all of that stuff, right? You've all probably lived in both types of subdivisions. Our code right now says that you're required to do curb, gutter, and sidewalk, except for when we allow you to not to, right? The problem with that is when the subdivision process is administrative, it's really hard to say when we're gonna allow you to or not to. And as that translates back to this conversation, if you do it on gross acreage and you're gonna require curb, gutter, and sidewalk on new subdivisions, by definition, there's at least gonna be places for people to walk around and do all that stuff, right? It may not be grass, and it may not be, you know, nature, it's concrete nature, right? But at least it is a place for people to get out and do stuff and things like that. So I think we need to clarify that, for one, just in general. We need to do that anyways, now that the state has forced the subdivision process to be entirely administrative. So we need to clarify that. And two, if we do require that, then we could probably reduce this a little bit. It could probably be something that is less of an exaction, right? There's a bunch of new subdivisions going on out in the county, in the Cedar Valley, where there's no curb, gutter, and sidewalk, and that's fine. You know, you see that a lot in Parowan, we have it all over the place. In Enoch, you see a lot of subdivisions without curb, gutter, and sidewalk. But they're usually on a more, larger lots, more rural, where they have borrow ditches and things like that. So, that goes back into this applicability by zone, so.
Well, I think curb and gutter on new development with sidewalks probably makes sense, but maybe not on RE zone.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I would agree with that.
Absolutely.
Seems sensible, doesn't it?
Yeah, 'cause I've lived in both, and I currently live in one with curb and gutter and sidewalk, and it's way better.
My pat answer when somebody asks is, it's required. If you wanna bring the city a viable drainage plan, then the planning commission can consider not requiring it, but that actually doesn't make any sense with the new requirements that say, you follow the code, you get your subdivision.
Yeah, well, if it, outside of, I mean, I don't know, this is a very, me not being completely professional in it, but outside of RE, it'll be really hard to put a good drainage plan together without it. 'Cause
And
you
you-
don't have
and
this,
you'll have
you don't really
dirty-
space.
You'll have dirty drainage water too, with no curb to catch it, so you're gonna have washout.
Well, the argument is you have to do less drainage planning, because there's a lot that soaks in the borrow ditches, that if it's curb, gutter, and sidewalk, it gets delivered to its endpoint quickly. So we tell people, you have to, in all new subdivisions, they have to retain their own additional drainage, right? And if they come up to us with a plan with borrow ditches, and depending on the math, they may have to have a smaller retention basin than if it's curb, gutter, and sidewalk, 'cause you're taking away that factor of soaking in, right? But they're still gotta show us a drainage plan, one way or the other. But, the practical living with that, just ask Enoch City, people don't maintain their borrow ditches. They go put their own, cross gutter in, their own culvert in, they don't engineer it, they put it in too high, or else they put it in too small, and then you end up with drainage problems, and it's a nightmare, so.
They've had some significant problems.
Major problems with drainage in Enoch, of course, it's pretty flat.
And it's about the lowest part of the valley down there.
Yep, it's the bathtub, the bottom of the bathtub. What does everybody think about Weston's idea of changing the requirement as the subdivisions get larger? As it is, it's fair from a percentage standpoint. You're giving up 3.5% or whatever it is, no matter how big it is, that's the exaction is the same. But it becomes a large dedication as you get into a bigger subdivision. Now, having said that, they rarely all build out at once. They usually build in phases, and that's the way we would apply this. So, since the Meisner subdivision has been, or the annexation has been approved, we already know, talking to them, and that's usually the way subdivisions build out, they'll come in with phase 1, and it'll be 40 houses, or 80 houses. And then they'll come in with phase 2, and phase 3. We can only apply this to the phase that's being brought in. So if it's more than 10 acres on phase 1, then whatever is above 10 acres will apply. If it's less than 10 acres, so we're not really looking at 200 acres ever, unless it's like really a master planned project that's all at once being applied for.
I like Weston's idea. I wonder if you could come up with something like not to exceed X amount of acres or something like that, so we don't have a.
Oh, yeah, you could put a hard cap on the acreage, yeah.
Yeah.
That's pretty common too.
Yeah.
A cap on the acreage.
A cap on the required
Requirement.
dedication.
Okay.
You could say, like, for example, the way it's written, this medium density, 3% of the gross area of the subdivision, with a cap of X amount of acres.
What would you say the typical subdivision phase is acreage-wise?
I don't know, Jamie, what do you think?
Oh, gee.
Ballpark that,
Isn't it-
realtor
isn't it
lady.
like,
I don't even know. You guys,
isn't it like
there's so many
10 to
different-
20?
I mean, Parowan has had a subdivision that's, like, the closest one I can think of is the one down by the freeway. That was a subdivision, and that's, like, Parowan subdivisions tend to be smaller than Enoch or Cedars, like that, so.
Well, up in Gurr subdivision, you probably have a good 10 or 15 acres right there, don't you?
Yeah, yeah.
What about Maple Spring? What about your subdivision you live in,
Yeah, Maple
Shane?
Springs and Stillwater.
Yeah, you could combine them, that's a good.
I mean, so they,
20 plus.
and I
Yeah,
don't know if they
like
did, but I
30
think they were both just one-phase subdivisions, but they were smaller.
So Stillwater, there's
There's,
3 phases of that one.
Or were there 3?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm in phase 1, then phase 2's down the road a little bit, and then phase 3 finished out back to the highway.
But see, that's what I'm getting at. Even that subdivision, which is what, 20 acres, 25 total?
Yeah.
well, Stillwater and Maple Springs were by different.
I know, but it say the Stillwater, it was in 3 phases, the total acreage was, we could look it up.
There's like in my phase 1, there's like 12 lots, and they're all close to half acre.
So there's 6
to
acres.
7 acres, yeah.
So call it 15 total acres.
Yeah,
And they came in 3 phases, so they probably all would have come in at less than 10 acres, which means they had the option of a fee in lieu of. But you're still gotta come up with a percentage that you would apply to that if they wanted to choose the fee in lieu of. But in that case, according to this, that would be 1.5% of the gross area. What's 1.5% times 15 acres?
0.15.
yeah.
No, times 15 acres.
Oh, 15.
0.2, isn't it?
2.5.
Everybody grab their calculator.
Yeah, it's about a little under a quarter acre. That's
Point
not
two
enough.
two five,
Yeah, just shy of a quarter acre.
quarter acre, yeah.
Yeah, it's just a little under a quarter of an acre, and so, but,
That's one pickleball court, right?
Yeah.
Roughly?
Yeah.
I don't know, 10,000 square feet, but for a subdivision like that, think of it in terms of a pocket park, which, if it's small enough, we don't want pocket parks, but we do want the fair exaction, right? We could take we could take the difference and we could put it into a park that's nearby or something like that.
I think 5%'s a lot more suitable number for 10 or 15 acre phases. But, let's see. Yeah. 5% would give you 3/4 of an acre. It's not unreasonably large, is it? Or small? What do you figure the city park is up here in the town square?
Which,
That's probably about an acre and a half, isn't it? Maybe an acre?
you mean the Main Street Park?
Yeah.
Google Earth takes a minute to load on my,
Not counting the library property, but
Ouch.
like from the west side of the library to the west side of the park, up to the Old Rock Church.
That's handy.
okay,
isn't it?
somebody's gonna have to tell me what 9409
Would you-
is divided by,
Would you consider the library grounds as part of the park?
well, you could
Or would
remove
you
it.
go
You
west
got
of
the library building there, which,
Yeah, I would,
That's considered park?
not the building, but all around it, people
Okay.
recreate.
That's about,
That's
just
probably-
a little over 2 acres.
Yeah.
So that's a little over 2 acres, minus the park, so but figure that's a 2 acre park.
So we can kinda see what 3/4 of an acre would be out of that.
Sure. 3/4 of an acre would probably be something like this, I'm guessing. That's more than an acre, right? What's an acre, 32,000?
Isn't it 28? Somebody's gotta look
Yeah,
that
that's
up.
.8. That, you were at .8, I'm impressed.
Was I?
Pretty close.
So yeah, that's 3/4 of an acre.
28,000 square feet is an acre?
Yeah, 43,560.
Yeah, 43, that's right, 43,560. So yeah, I had it about 3/4 of an acre in that space right there. But that's for a 15 acre subdivision, if you have it at 5%. If it comes in 3 phases, in this scenario, you would require either they give up a 1/4 of an acre per phase, or the rough equivalent of the fee.
If they came in 3 phases,
Because we apply that code
across phases?
per application.
Oh. So
Because
sometimes-
the future
sometimes-
phases may never happen. Like, you can have a 10 acre piece of
But-
park
so-
land, and they'll come in with a first acre,
But if they're not about to happen, we approve them?
and that's what we're approving, is the subdivision that is happening.
Okay.
Future stuff is all, who knows what's gonna happen, maybe nothing, ever. So we can only apply the code to the phase that's being applied for. Now, if it is a PUD that we're doing under development agreement, or if they're asking for something else that allows us to have a development agreement, then we can talk other sort of agreements. Which is why we had that whole conversation with the city council with the Meisner annexation, because as I reminded the council many times, while we're doing an agreement as a condition on this annexation, we can negotiate for what that looks like. What they chose to do is just apply the code, subdivision by subdivision, as it goes through there, so.
Is there no way that a subdivision could be made to maintain their own open space? Or would that require an HOA type situation?
I think that you could, with open space requirements, require them to, retain it. That gets kind of difficult, because in order to do that, you have to have, how are they gonna maintain it? Is there gonna be some sort of an entity that maintains it? Now you're essentially requiring an HOA with
Yeah.
fees and...
That's what I was afraid of, but it would take the load off the city and it would still
We-
provide open space.
We do require that on PUDs and master plan zones.
So, yeah, I mean, this is at the subdivision level, right? And you're still considering with your CIP, doing an impact fee at the individual lot developments.
We
stage,
still
right?
have those in place no matter what.
So,
And we have to be a little careful not to double dip.
right,
That's why we're not requiring them to install parks and then collecting money
Right.
to install
cause I
parks.
think this is a better approach, cause we're getting something up front, and then as the density increases, you're collecting that and able to put it into your plan.
Yeah, we're reserving space.
So you can make,
And you know, the
Effectively,
other thing you
it's
could
a
do is just say,
condition.
keep it open. You don't even have to dedicate it to the city. If you wanna dedicate it to the city, you can, but if not, you gotta keep it open.
Yeah, if you take the money, where does the space come from later?
That's the whole point of this thing, is you're reserving the space.
Or taking the money, or both?
You're reserving the space. If it's small enough, it's weird to reserve little pieces.
Right.
That's why you're giving them an in lieu of
yeah,
option.
so if it's a small space, we're taking the money to put into a park
Yep.
But if,
close by.
Or even to
Or-
take that money and acquire space or
Yeah,
something.
acquire space.
The whole point of this is just that you're trying to reserve the space before it gets built out with,
but you're still taking money and there's no space acquired.
on a small one, yeah.
And property prices continue to go up. And we don't have any property, but we've got a fee.
Right. Which is why if you preserve the space and they dedicate it, then when the houses are built, you take the impact fee from those houses, and as long as our impact fees are being updated from time to time, we'll be collecting the correct impact fee that we can actually go in and make the improvements. The whole goal here is to have growth pay for growth, not have growth impact the existing citizens by either reducing the amount of available parks, or crowding of parks, let me put it that way. Or making the existing citizens now have to go pay for parks because there was growth that came in via property taxes or something like that, right? So that's the principle here.
Could you require physical space be given to the city as it's needed?
Well, this is the only way to do that. It's at the time that the property's being developed.
But say this latest development's happening next to an existing park, so it makes no sense to have another one. Could you go in lieu of on that, but then in a different situation where a park is away from everything else, or a subdivision's away from all the other parks, and it makes sense to have one, could the city opt to take land instead of a fee?
Yeah, the default.
That way you're not collecting money and then looking for land later on.
Right.
And you know your money won't cover it.
So this is what this
Your
does.
fees.
This does give the city the ability to give them credit. Hang on, that's a different spot.
I mean, if we're the city planners, we should be able to
So this is what it
decide where a
says.
park goes and when it's needed, right?
This is what it says for the fee in lieu of dedication. So think of it this way, by default, they have to dedicate land. That's gonna preserve the land so the city doesn't have to go out and buy it. Or worse, take down a house to make a park,
Well,
right?
unless they do the fee, right, in lieu of?
But they can only do the fee in lieu of on a small subdivision, which we've defined as under 10 acres.
Okay, I must have missed that part.
With the exception, and this now comes to the planning commission. The city may allow a fee in lieu of subdivisions 10 acres or greater upon finding that there is already sufficient parkland available within half a mile of the site,
That makes
or the dedication would result in an unusable or fragmented open space.
Okay.
Other than that, but that is decided by the planning commission. If they wanna try for the fee in lieu of on a large park, they have to come to the planning commission, and you guys can always tell them no. That's how it's written right now.
Well, I don't think that sounds too bad, does it?
No, I like it.
I like it.
Do we still need to tweak the percentage though, or
Um,
it just seems a little squeamish on 10 acres? 1.5 does.
on low density, I don't feel like it is.
But low density, no.
Yeah, so there wouldn't be as many homes in there, that's why it goes up.
Yeah.
My thought process was just kinda like, well, if a big subdivision comes in and then has to donate 6 acres or something like that, that seems extreme for a park, to me.
Well, yeah, that's why we're talking about the schedule. After you pass a certain size, then cut it back.
Yeah. Like
But
not to exceed.
High density would definitely need more than 1.5.
Yeah, and high density does, it has 4.5,
Yeah, that'd be,
Where did you
yeah.
see that? Oh,
right down there.
okay.
Yep.
All right.
So R1, RE is nothing, R1 is 1.5, R2 is 3%, and R3 is 4.5%.
Sweet. A football field is 1.32 acres, by the way, I looked that up.
Is it? That's just the field though, that
That's
doesn't
just
count
the field.
Just
the
the
track and the
Not
bleachers
everything
and the
else
parking
around
lot.
it.
We need to build a new no, I don't know, maybe our football field's great.
I mean, is that something that the city can maintenance and take care of, a six-acre park, or, you know, not like we see those huge subdivisions like that, but,
Well, in some cases, just, 6 acres would be a 400 acre
yeah, that's
development,
huge.
it's big, but it can look and feel different than just a big park, because dedicating right of way for a trail system will take up quite a bit of,
Yeah,
But look at it this way, let's say you had a massive, let's say the Alex Meisner subdivision comes in all at once. And what did we figure if it's R1, and it's actually some R1 and some R2. But let's just say it was all R1 and it was that large, 1.5%. So it's 170 acres, I'm getting to a point, I
like
promise.
3 acres,
170 acres times,
2.5
yeah.
what's that?
it's 2.5
2.5 what?
acres.
Oh, okay, you guys already did the math. So 2.5 acres for 170 acres that is going to have 50 homes.
That sounds about right.
Yeah,
It
that's
sounds
good.
about right, even
Yeah.
scaled up.
Yep, okay, never mind, I changed my mind.
That doesn't seem-
And it may be a couple of different parks.
And
It may not be
different
just one 2.5 acre park,
That
right?
was at 1.5?
That was at 1.5.
Yeah. So it's good on that end, but it's not so good on the 10 acre scenario.
10 acre scenarios is a quarter acre lot
On low density.
on low density.
So that's
But
fine.
now if it's higher density, then the acreage goes way up.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
there's
4.5
tight
and
lots
3.
and tight houses, they need more space to.
Yeah,
Yeah,
So let's look at that, 10 acre lot, or a 15 acre subdivision, where'd my calculator go?
With the high density at 4.5?
With the high density at 4.5, so 15 acres times .04.
.67.
So that's 2/3 of an acre.
How many residences do you think would live?
15 acres, the residence on R3 is the hardest to say because
It might be stacked, or,
it might be stacked, it might be single homes with smaller lots, but R2 would be easier to figure it out because you're looking at 2 homes per 8,500.
4 homes per acre-ish?
2 residential units per, so 8,500. What's 43,000 divided by 8,500?
4.7.
So 4.7 residential units per acre. Now times that by 15 acres. course, you can't get that many in there 'cause of the roads and all
Yeah,
that
roads
stuff.
and everything like that, and
So-
sidewalks.
So that's 70, so take it back to what, 60?
Take it back to 60, 55, say 55 residential units, and now you have closer to 3/4 of an acre,
And you got 2 kids in each one that needs a park?
well,
Oh.
unless now you're getting into demographics.
Are we a
And you have
retirement
curbs that
community
are
or a
sidewalks, too.
childbearing
You
community?
have a sidewalk.
And if you have sidewalk requirement, right.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So,
So, I have a suggestion. If you guys think that even if you wanna tweak the numbers or something like this, maybe we take it, schedule a public hearing, see what sort of input the public has, come back, and if you still wanna kinda tweak get some input from the public, unless you wanna just change tack in a totally different direction. If you think we're close to that, I'd say let's schedule a public hearing and see what the public has to say, and then you can go back and tweak it a little bit if you want, and send a recommendation.
Wouldn't a trail system be much easier to maintain?
So they could present a trail system.
Probably
Like,
just-
we're just talking total acreage. They could say, yeah, we're gonna put a trail through the middle.
So this not necessarily park space, it can be trail
Right,
space?
it's
Oh,
open
Open.
space.
okay.
Now, if it's some unusable open space, we're gonna reject it. If they say, yeah, that property that's on that
Mountainside?
50-degree angle on the mountainside, that's our open space, we're gonna say, no, that doesn't work.
It makes, like, say, when they were talking about working through their recreation master plan, for a lack of a better term.
Right.
That helps us in this scenario, 'cause then you can look at an application and go,
Yeah.
what's the best use here?
Yeah.
For the city.
So, I don't know if you all followed the Meisner annexation right towards the end. We were trying to negotiate, I think there was a lot of different opinions as to what direction we should go in. At one point, Councilwoman Downey said, I'd really like to see some trails and some benches that people could walk and sit down and stuff like that. Anyways, it's funny because then about 2 months later, we were kind of at a stalled point, and what the council was saying was, well, let's wait and see what this open space requirement ends up being. Because Meisner had rejected a large fee in lieu of proposal. And so then we said, well, bring us any proposal you have, and maybe we'll like what you have. And what they brought back was, on the main, cutting all the way through their property, there's a main road on our transportation master plan. They said, we'll put in this area that is like a landscaped area with like a winding trail, like a 10-foot trail system that goes through it, and park benches and plants and stuff like that. And then ultimately, after all the discussion, we just went back to defaulting that whatever comes out of this is what will apply. And we agreed to that and left it be. But, let's say we put this in, just the way it's written, just for entertaining the idea. They very well may come back to, well, we could put in that meandering trail system and comply. We'd be like, okay, cool, because it complies.
Okay.
So that could be I'm just saying, anybody could do something like that as long as it kind of fits the requirement, right?
alright. I'm fine with scheduling a public hearing and then going from there. What do you guys think?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we're at that point.
Alright, I'll take a motion.
Go ahead, Weston.
What is this?
I was waiting for Shane, he's really good at it.
I'm trying to see the date. We wanna do it the next meeting,
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, boy, yeah, I forgot about that.
which is the 16th?
Looks
Yep.
like it is this,
14 and 2,
Yeah,
yeah,
16th.
16th.
no, it would actually be, 16th. Yep.
Wow.
Yep.
I'll move to schedule the public hearing for the Parks and Open Space subdivision requirement for the July 16th, 2025 meeting.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
No.
Alright, can get that scheduled. Let's move on to reports. Jerry,
I have nothing to report.
anything from David? Did you
Oh,
have
no,
anything?
no, I've made the comments that he's asked me to, and
Okay, perfect. Shane?
we just wish him well and pray for his health.
Yeah.
So far, our, development down there going into my street, we're doing a pretty good job with dust control, so I'm
Awesome.
happy with that.
And they have the preliminary plat's approved, and we're working through the final plat stuff. They have an early grading permit to do what they're doing. And, I mean, they're essentially moving forward with the risk that the final never gets approved, right? But that's on them, and they're doing that. So, but it's fine. But yes, I've heard the dust control is great because, and we've had some recent work that people haven't done dust control, so we really appreciate it when they do it.
Is that, their drainage system they're putting in right now, or?
No, they go over excavate all the roads and all that stuff, and then they bring them all back in after they put in all the utilities. Typically where you see them do that, they go and excavate where everything needs to be moved out, then they put in all the utilities, compact it all, and then build the roads back up to the correct grade. So they're just starting all of the underlying excavation work.
All right, Weston,
Nope, we're good.
Dan?
Nope.
Okay, and I don't have anything public comment. All right, just need a motion.
I make a motion to adjourn.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right.